Hello,
Hello,
everyone.
everybody.
So excited to be here. Finally, it's time.
Ah,
Indeed, it's time, it's time, it's time. Maria, what are you most excited about?
Oh my gosh, everything.
Oh.
Everything. We've been waiting for this for so long. And the team has done such a great job working on this. I want to thank every single one of the team members who've put so much time and effort into putting all of this together.
absolutely.
What about you, Ben?
Oh gosh, it's just there's been so much build up, and I'm sure a lot of people can't wait in anticipation. So I'm just excited to hear what Evan has to say.
That is amazing. Well, I just want to welcome everybody to the stream today, live via YouTube. The people that are watching the conference probably via the virtual event platform. We started in February, going into a crazy time. We didn't expect that we probably couldn't do a real life conference afterwards anymore. But we're happy that we found a solution for this and that we could do virtual events over the summer, and that we can hopefully continue this towards February in a free available event online as well. But okay, shall we just try to give Evan one big round of applause, and then we pull him on the screen of us?
Yes, let's
with the
do
four
it.
of us. Also, everybody in the chat, maybe one big applause, and then we'll add him. Yeah.
Woo!
So excited.
Evan, welcome.
Evan!
Hey!
Hello!
Hello. So happy to be here. Well, I'm technically in my home, but still.
You're in spirit.
We're really happy to have you. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you so much for announcing your huge news with us today. So I'm gonna leave it up to Ben and Maria to introduce you, because they have been working endlessly to make this amazing MC experience. And I've heard that Ben did some crazy last minute things for you. So I really would like to give him the honors to introduce you.
Sure.
Sounds good. All right. Well, let's, as many of you know, we have the amazing Evan here waiting to basically give us the talk that we all have been waiting for. I'm not actually going to spend much time introducing, because I think we all know and love Evan for the things that he's done. And so, I mean, Maria, if you have anything else, I think we should give it up for Evan to give his talk.
Yeah, we're all so excited.
All right. And with that, take it away, Evan.
Sure. All right. Yeah, I'm super excited to be talking to everyone about the journey to Vue 3. So it's been a very long development process, if we look back. So there have been so much going on. We worked on so much stuff. So I think it's worthwhile for us to all take a look back. I actually spent quite some time sort of looking back in all the Git history and trying to figure out what I have been doing for the past 2 years. So here is where the whole idea began. The very first idea about Vue 3 actually started in February 2018. So that's more than 2 years ago. But that was just the very first idea. I was thinking, hey, maybe I should think about what the next major version should look like. And that was kind of just the seed of the idea. I didn't start working on it immediately, but I started having a little project where I was just laying out some imaginary folders about how I would reorganize the code if I were to rewrite from the ground up. And I was also playing with TypeScript, playing with the monorepo setup, and just testing with a lot of the new things that I figured I could use if we were to rewrite everything from the ground up. And that was the first prototype phase. And it went on and off. I was still working on Vue 2, and it took almost half a year. I mean, it's not full-time investment into it. So I got a working prototype that has a very bare minimal virtual DOM runtime working in September 2018, and it has the initial version of a proxy-based reactivity system as well. Now, so a week later, I decided to graduate the prototype And then I created the Vue Next repo, which was still private back then. And then I announced the plan to start working on Vue 3 at Vue.js London, September 21st. So ironically, the day that I graduated the prototype into the Vue Next repo was exactly 2 years ago. So I just realized that myself today. So that's kind of crazy. Now, that was the first phase. So first phase was really early prototyping, just figuring out ideas to see if the new repository layout makes sense, to see if I could work with TypeScript. Honestly, that was the first time I actually using TypeScript for something that's real, that's big. So it turned out I found it to be working really well. So we decided to move on with TypeScript. And in phase 2, we went into a more of an exploration phase. So this is the phase we are trying out new things. We're trying out ideas to see if it would technically work with Vue. So we're playing around with a class-based API, playing around with TypeScript to see how type inference could work differently, playing around with React hooks as well. We're just really intrigued by React hooks and wanted to find out. Turns out it was really easy to implement the exactly same thing in Vue, but we wanted to see what ideas we can. Obviously, we're not just going to copy it verbatim, so we were figuring out how the good ideas inside hooks can be translated into a more idiomatic Vue fashion. And playing around a lot with different ideas like time slicing. And many of these didn't actually end up going into the final version because this phase is really open-ended. We're just looking at all the interesting ideas that's coming out in the wider front-end community and to see which of them makes sense, which of them might work, which of them might not. In order to get the community more involved in the design process, we decided to establish an RFC process in January 2019. And that essentially makes the whole design development process of Vue 3 more or less public in a way that if we are planning to make a major breaking change into the framework for Vue 3, we will actually write an RFC first and discuss it with the community. And we have threads with hundreds and hundreds of comments, which kind of led us to realize GitHub is actually not that good for organizing this huge scale of discussions, but that's another story. So in February 2019, we released the class API RFC. Some of you might still remember it, but obviously there is no class API in Vue 3 as of now. And in March and May, that was the phase where I started to feel like we are making progress, but we're not making breakthroughs. We're not bringing anything fundamentally new or exciting to Vue 3 at this stage. So I decided to take a step back because we're not in a rush to release Vue 3 at that time. So I was thinking, hey, maybe I should just take a step back, spend some time, and think about just fundamentally rethink what we're doing in the repository and figure out some to the improvements that we're seeing at that time was just not enough to warrant a new major version, right? So I went back to researching, and that researching kind of brought to us the idea of two aspects. First is I dropped the class API, and the second is I rewrote the core rendering logic from the ground up again. So this time, the idea is we want to write the virtual DOM runtime in a way that is aware of the compiler, because that is the unique strength of Vue. We have both the compiler and the runtime. So the compiler can actually generate code that's specifically optimized for the specific runtime. So with that in mind, we designed the whole rendering strategy from the ground up again. And that took us another 2 months. And we also released the function API RFC in June 2019. So this brought a lot of controversy because of our communication problems. So some community members were not happy that we are indicating this will replace the current Vue API. And after a lot of discussion, feedback, we realized, okay, this is what the community wants. So we spent another 2 months reworking the whole proposal, thinking about how this would better fit in in terms of where Vue stands, and published the reworked composition API RFC in August. So at this stage, what I call this phase is the pivot phase, where we kind of made a pivot from class into the more composition API-oriented new direction. We also came up with this new rendering strategy that brought us significantly better performance improvements. So once we have validated these two major new ideas, the next phase is to go full speed ahead and get feature parity with V2. So in September 2019, we added options API support and started working on the new compiler implementation. V-model in October, transition system in November, tooling support, single file component compiler, hot module replacement support in December. And in January 2020, we released the first alpha version of 3.0. And then we spent another 3 months working on server-side rendering. So server-side rendering is particularly time-consuming in the sense that Vue 3 server-side rendering is actually vastly improved in terms of handling parallel async dependencies. And also, the server-side rendering is also compiler-informed in the sense the compiler takes your template and generates a completely different format of function for server-side rendering specifically. And it aggressively converts your template into plain string concatenations as much as possible. So we're seeing 2 to 3 times better server-side rendering performance in Vue 3 as well. Now in April 2019, actually this should be 2020. So in April 2020, we reached beta 1. So all of these should be changed to 2020. I'm going to change it right now, just to avoid confusing everyone. And after the beta phase, we spent another 3 months dogfooding. Just want to make sure because beta phase is technically the last chance where we can still make significant breaking changes. So we want to take a good amount of time validating that the current system, the current way everything works, fits together, can actually support end-to-end use cases. And that is why we dogfooded this whole thing via Vite, which is a experimental project that that uses native ES modules as a dev server. So this actually leverages the full single file component compilation, hot module replacement, and everything, just making sure the whole development experience can work smoothly. And then vPress, which leverages Vite, server-side rendering, static side generation, hydration, and everything to verify that the whole server-side rendering universal application story works as expected. And at the same time, the team spent a lot of effort working on all these sub-projects, such as the router, CLI, Vuex, test utils, ESLint plugins, and everything. So this is the period where the ecosystem is really really trying to push the official ecosystem to be Vue 3 compatible. And finally, in July 2020, we released the first release candidate. And now 2 months has passed. We fixed a ton of bugs. We found a lot of behavior inconsistent issues. We worked, so Ben and the docs team worked, put tremendous amount of effort into writing the new docs. And finally, I hope UFC fans get the reference. It's time. So I'm really, really, really excited to announce Vue.js 3.0 One Piece. Okay, so 3.0, 2 years, 37 RFCs, 2,600 commits, 628 pull requests. That's excluding automated bot pull requests. These are all pull requests by actual humans, manually reviewed and merged. 99 contributors, and tremendous amount of work in sub-projects by all our team members. So this couldn't have been possible without all the effort by our team members, our contributors, our community members for just engaging us in the design feedback process, our sponsors for financially supporting the project, and the overall wider community for just supporting Vue. So this is a community project. Vue is created for the community and sustained by the community. So I really want to express my deepest appreciation for the Vue community. Thank you all for making this possible. So Vue's mission has always been to be a framework that is approachable, that's easy to learn with a mild learning curve. And more importantly, we want it to be a framework that grows with the user. So what does that even mean? That means even though Vue retains a very mild learning curve that a beginner with basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript knowledge can pick up Vue, we realize that users don't always stay a beginner. They will start to grow. They will start to build more challenging projects. They will grow in their career into more challenging scenarios. They will be faced with tasks that are harder to deal with than their previous knowledge. So if they choose a framework that's easier to start with, we don't want them to be stuck with the simple solutions that cannot deal with future complex cases later. So the goal of Vue is to retain this mild learning curve, but still give you all the possible tools, systems, and advanced APIs that you might need one day in the future to deal with these complex cases. And to do that better, we have to take this concept a bit further. So today we have more than 1.3 million weekly active users. This is based on the statistics reported by our DevTools extension. And more than 8 million NPM downloads per month. It's being used by some of the most iconic and influential organizations around the world. And also, not to mention, we want to really mention Vue is also really huge in the small to medium-sized businesses. And I think that's actually where the largest chunk of Vue users are. So we're really proud to be able to be a framework that can cover such a wide range of use cases, from individual small businesses, medium-sized businesses, to all these big corporations. It's sometimes you might think there's no one-size-fits-all solution, but if you build something that is really designed from the ground up to be incrementally adoptable, yes, we can make that happen, and that is what Vue is trying to do, and we have done that. So Vue 3 is trying to take this concept even further, taking the progressive concept even further. So what's new in Vue 3? If you've been following along with all the development process, which is completely public, you probably already know all of this. It's more maintainable for us as maintainers by switching to TypeScript. We modularize the internals. Faster, better performance, new proxy-based reactivity system, compiler-informed virtual DOM and server-side rendering, tree shaking to make it smaller, compile time flags to allow you to drop things that cannot be automatically tree shaken. It scales better, provides composition API to tackle complex use cases, and we offering better development experience. The new single file component improvements, which I'll talk in a bit. And Vader is also making great improvements by providing type checking for template expressions and props of subcomponents. So the modularized internals means Vue 3 core. Vue core is no longer a single black box. Now we have these internal pieces like @Vue/reactivity is a completely standalone package that can be used. So you can basically work with Vue's reactivity system without the rest of Vue. The runtime core is the platform agnostic core runtime that doesn't assume any end rendering targets and exposes an API for you to build custom renderers on top of it. Compiler core, again, is also completely platform agnostic, and the compiler architecture is pluggable, so you can use custom compiler plugins. So what these does is unlocking advanced use cases for users with very special needs. For example, you can do compile time customizations via the compiler plugins. For example, build time internationalization. So we already have the Vue I18 project already has a project that does exactly this. We have custom renders. We have that can target different render targets. Native script Vue is already working on the Vue 3 compatible version. We have Vue.gl, which is a WebGL-based renderer, WebGL renderer based on Vue 3. We have even renderers that can render to terminals. We also have standalone reactivity package, which can be used with external templating systems if you feel like the whole Vue package is still too big for you, or you want to just build your own framework, but you don't want to re-implement the reactivity system from the ground up. So all of these are made possible due to the new decoupled internal architecture. And TypeScript gives us better IDE support, so make us more confident and easier for us to do refactoring, fixing bugs, write better tests. And it actually lowers the contribution barrier, contrary to popular belief. The reason is in Vue 2, in a project of Vue scale, it is extremely difficult to be confident about making changes without concrete type information. So TypeScript's presence actually gives contributors more confidence in making changes in a code base that they don't necessarily own, or they don't know every part of the code base. But TypeScript can help tremendously in lowering that barrier, making them more confident in making changes. And this is actually exemplified by how many pull requests we got in the Vue 3 code base before we even go to the public release. We got over 600 pull requests in this development process, all from external and the majority of them from external contributors. So that is amazing. Externally, this also meets the increasing demand for users that are using TypeScript with Vue. So in Vue 2, we are manually maintaining the consistency between the source code and the generated type, the type declarations. But in Vue 3, everything is auto-generated, verified during CI. So that makes it more consistent and ensures that it's always up to date. Composition API. I'm not going to go into too much depth here. You probably already all know about this. It's a purely additive set of API for advanced use cases, provides natural and complete TypeScript support. It's designed for logic organization, encapsulation, and reuse, and is recommended replacement for mixins. So if you don't know about Composition API, you can read about it in the docs later. Compiler-informed virtual DOM. This is where the secret sauce of all the performance improvements in Vue 3. So we are looking at the template. It is extremely easy to know which part of the template is dynamic and which part of the template is completely static. It's not so easy to tell if you're using pure JavaScript render functions. So Vue leverages this opportunity of template compilation to do aggressive ahead-of-time analysis and optimizations to generate a render function that leaves all these necessary hints for the runtime to do less work. So the runtime, when it receives the compiled render function, knows exactly where the node is, so it can go directly to update that node without caring for the rest. So the best part is this system can actually seamlessly fall back to full traditional virtual DOM diffing if a component using manual render function is encountered. So this means in a Vue application, you can get the best of both worlds. You can write the majority of your presentational components using templates to get the best of performance possible. But in certain cases where the need really demands, you can still drop down to render functions to express complex logic using JavaScript. Or you can use a library that is logic heavy internally using render functions, but you don't really need to care. You can still write templates in your application while using that library. Compiler-informed SSRs, same story. We leverage the template compilation process to produce server-side render functions that are extremely efficient. We concatenate everything into strings as much as possible and only run JavaScript when necessary. There's also efficient hydration on the client because when we know during the hydration, we can also leverage all these compiler hints to only selectively hydrate the nodes that are eventually going to be dynamic and skip the parts that are completely static. The global tree shaking API makes everything smaller. So with all features included, Vue 3 is around 23 kilobytes minified plus broadly compression. So this is approximately the same size with Vue 2, but it actually packs more features, right? All these new features like fragments, teleport, suspense are included, and we're still at the same size with Vue 2. And if you throw away some of these optional features, like you're not using transition, you're not using keep alive, you're not using suspense, then it can be shaped down to 14 kilobytes. And we also offer compile time flags. If you're using a bundler, you can set a compile time flag to say, drop this feature. Say, if you drop the options API and use composition API only, you can shave another 2 kilobytes. So we're going to make a lot of these things more customizable for advanced users, so you can get the smallest bundle possible. And finally, we have some new single file component features to improve development experience. So one of the gripes about the composition API is you have to manually return everything in a setup function. So script setup is a syntax sugar to make it more pleasant to write and use composition API inside single file components or Vue files. And style vars gives you state-driven CSS variables injection into the style blocks of your single file components. So essentially, you can use dynamic runtime behavior to determine the CSS that's being used in your style blocks. So this is what the script setup looks like. Inside, you can directly export a binding, and that binding is implicitly exposed to your template. And this is what script setup looks like when it works with TypeScript. So we have thought about all the new syntax and TypeScript support as well. So more details in the RFC. I'm not going to go into too much depth here. And one thing to mention is we also shipped an experimental suspense feature. So if you are a React user, you probably know what suspense is. So Vue suspense does something quite similar, although there are a lot of behavioral differences, obviously. It's not exactly the same thing, but they're trying to solve similar problems in that you can declaratively ask your component rendering to wait on nested async dependencies. That is to say, if you have a component subtree, and inside that subtree, there are nested components that need to do something async, you can use suspense at the root level to wait on all of them to be resolved before displaying everything at once. And it's still experimental, but you've actually already seen it in action from the nuxt.3 demo. The new nuxt.3 async data fetch and solution is already built on top of this new suspense feature. Okay. So now let's get into the release process. So we released Vue 3 today. 3.0 core is marked stable now, but it remains on the @next distribution tag on NPM for now, because we don't want to suddenly disrupt all the existing workflows. If you do NPM install Vue at latest and suddenly you get a new major version. So we want to give ahead of some time for the community to prepare for that. Subprojects, a lot of the subprojects are still in beta or RC status, and we'll be graduating them to stable very soon. So all of the subprojects, including Vue 3 core and their code on GitHub, they're all going to be staying on the next denoted branch or tag for now. And we're planning to coordinate a synchronized switch from next to latest, from next to master or the main branch, by the end of 2020. Another thing to note is we're still working on the migration build. So if you have an existing Vue 2 project that you want to migrate to Vue 3, we suggest you that wait a bit longer. IE support is also still work in progress. So we're going to be working on the migration build and IE 11 support in Q4 2020. We're also planning for 2.7. So 2.x will receive a last planned minor release in Q1 2021. We will be backporting compatible 3.x features, and there will be opting 3.x compatible behavior and deprecation warnings. So it would make it easier for you to gradually go from 2.6 to 2.7, then to the migration build of 3.0, and eventually migrate to 3. So the 2.7 is going to be the last planned 2.x release. So automatically, once it's released, it directly enters LTS for 18 months. So if you want to try out Vue 3 today, we have brand new docs at v3.vuejs.org. Again, it's going to live at this address for now. Until end of 2020, we're going to switch over the main Vue.js website over to the new version. We have a dedicated migration guide for existing Vue 2 users if you want to learn about what's changed, the breaking changes, new features, and where all the library status stands. So if you are existing user, you should go directly to the migration guide. And that's it for today. Thank you so much. I hope everyone can start playing with it. And it's been a really, really long journey. And again, really, really appreciate all the efforts put out by our team members and contributors. And hope you enjoy the Vue. Thank you.
Well, Maria, wow, that's been quite a long journey. People have been waiting quite some time for Vue 3 to be released.
Yeah, you know, I was kind of thinking that we would have to wait for Fix to fly for this to be released.
Oh!
It finally happened. It happened. It's here.
Wow. Okay.
So much rehearsing has gone into the big fly. So I was like, please, Ben, Maria, take it away. I cannot take this away from you because this is going to look great. Amazing, amazing. All right. Well, before we move into the Q&A session, Evan, thank you so much for being here with us today. Really, thank you for being on stage, presenting today. Thank you for being with us over the past few years on the Vuejs Amsterdam stage as well. We highly appreciate it that you're with us. Without further ado, I don't want to keep the crowd. I'm not technical enough to take over this Q&A session. So I will leave that to the people that actually have something useful to ask. And I will add our other teammates as well, Puya Parsa and Israel Roldan. And maybe Ben, maybe you can take it away if you want.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. So, Evan, how does it feel to have this finally off of your shoulders?
It feels great, but you know there are still a lot of work that we still need to do. So it's not completely off my shoulder. It's just good to finally put the message out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely need to celebrate over the weekend.
Yes, absolutely. Well deserved. So my first big question. So since the Vue 3 release is called One Piece, I have to ask, who's your favorite character on Luffy's crew?
That's a tough question. Probably Luffy himself.
Okay, nice. Very cool.
Oh,
Maria, you want
right.
to take the next one?
Yeah, I have a question. Somebody has a question for you. So what is the status of beta support for Vue 3?
Client has actually just been working on it. So he's been working on it really hard for the past 2 months. And I think he just got proper subcomponent prop type checking working in Vue. So if you pass the run type of props to an imported child component, Vue now actually gives you the correct type message directly in the template. So yeah, similar to JSX now. TSX, actually.
Nice.
Yep. So I personally actually haven't even tried it out yet, but I'm so excited about it. Yeah, it's amazing work.
Definitely.
Pooja, you want to take the next question?
Yes, I have lots of questions from Ivan. Something I was really, really curious to know your idea about is that Vue Reactivity package is now proven to be so flexible, and you have already used it for different frameworks. So I was wondering, do you have any plans to make it like an external library, or it will always be in the Vue mono repo? Because for me, it's like completely, it can be completely separated and be used for different frameworks, or like a basic utility for creating your own framework.
Yeah, I mean, it is a standalone package in the Moto repo. That is exactly what it is. So it will, so the Vue core package will re-export most of the APIs from the reactivity package. So you can essentially read Vue's documentation and understand how to use the Vue reactivity package. It's distributed alone on npm, so it's a dependency of Vue, technically. So if you don't need the whole Vue package, you can just install it alone. The code base is also standalone. It has its own test suites and everything. So yeah, you can essentially think of it as an individual project.
I see, exactly. So we can already start using it as an individual project.
Yeah, exactly.
In the Vue mono repo.
Yep.
Great. Israel, is there something you have specifically to ask for
Yes.
Evan?
For sure. First of all, Evan, I want to thank you on behalf of all my colleagues at Passionate People for always being part of this amazing Vuejs Amsterdam and Vuejs Global Conferences, and this is fantastic. Evan, I have a question for you about precisely this whole pluggability of the compiler and the whole model. So this is essentially going to be like provoking a boost in all the frameworks that are using and little projects that are trying to gain a lot of features like what Vue has. And I'm thinking a bunch of them, for example, to name one, Alpine. What is your idea when all of these projects are now going to be able to use this pluggable compiler to enable a Cambrian explosion of tools?
I see. So, well, I guess I need to clarify, like there is a certain level limit in terms of flexibility. Obviously, it's not like you can change all the directives to do completely different things, because there are certain assumptions that we have to keep to make sure everything works together. What you can do is, so they still have to be Vue templates. What you can do is you can hook into, say, a vbind expression. You can look at that expression, detect things, rewrite it, transform it as you see fit. Or you can, you technically can create your own. You can technically create your own directives if you want, but you cannot say remove an existing directive. So I guess that's where the limitation is. But still, if you're building an actual Vue application, it's going to be flexible enough for you to do some pretty crazy things.
As a quick follow-up on that one, what about the server side support, for example, not for rendering, but if I wanted to use some of these, the compiler toolchain as well, or the reactivity plugin on non necessarily Vue template application on the server side, would that be possible?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything preventing you from doing that.
Fantastic. I've seen this amazing idea of a Vue reactive file system built with Vue, right? So I was thinking about that when you mentioned the pluggability. So, well, thank you again for that. I also want to really quickly thank Jos for organizing this. Jos and Nikki, you're doing an amazing job with this.
Great job.
Continue.
Well, thank you. This wasn't part of the plan as well, but thank you very much.
It was for me.
Thank you. Maria, do you have any specific questions? Because I see that the chats are going crazy with questions.
Yes, so many questions.
Yes, we have a lot of questions coming in. So let's see. Are there any component libraries out there that are supporting Vue 3 yet?
Yes, there are. I think Ant Design Vue already has a Vue 3 compatible version. Vant UI is another one. These are probably the two earliest ones. I know there are various people already working on some of the Vue 3. I think these are the two earliest ones that they are declared to be feature complete. Other than that, I think very soon, it should be just in a couple months, we should see more Vue 3 compatible projects popping up. And if you are if you're a good developer, you can work on one yourself.
Great advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Get involved, everyone.
So, Evan, for those who might have missed it, for those who are currently on a version 2 legacy app, what do you recommend as far as their upgrade to Vue 3?
So I would recommend waiting a bit longer for now, mostly because if you have an untrivial Vue 2 app, it likely depend on some dependencies that is still Vue 2 specific. So you will have to, so the refactoring process now will be a bit painful because you either have to refactor all these dependencies away, or you have to wait until they're upgraded. And at the same time, Vue 3, we are trying to get a so-called migration build that detects Vue 2 usage and try to be compatible in places where we can, and then give you a soft warning telling to point you to the right to the documentation or the migration guide to sort of guide you through the process. So that thing is not complete yet, but we're going to be working on it in Q4. So if you want to migrate, we would suggest you to sort of hold on a bit longer.
Nice. Oh yeah. Is there a follow-up question you have in mind at this moment in time?
Yeah, it's more
I
about
have so many questions, so I want to give you the opportunity now.
Yeah, something in parentheses. When you publish the package, you already tried in the next tree and it's working last release, so it's really nice. One question I had is that you are keeping a separate repository for Vue 3, and you publish the release there. Is there any plan for merging it back, or it's going to be there?
Sorry, which package were you talking about?
For Nuxt.js, Vue 3 is going to be repository. It's going to be merged back to the main one, or you are going to keep it?
I think we're going to keep them separate because they each have their own issues and pull request history. Merging the two would be extremely confusing. I think it's best to keep them separate. Regarding the naming, we're still sort of debating on that, but I'm pretty sure we're not going to be merging the two.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
Evan, I wouldn't be doing a disservice to the community if I don't ask you about Vue 4. So I know there's already a roadmap that you published, I think, in March last year about like your ideas there and some things that you actually left out of the process of Vue 3. So just as a quick glance, is there anything on that list of things you have for Vue 4 that you would like, I really am looking forward to that?
Honestly, not yet. So the goal of Vue 3 actually had the part of the reason why we sort of invested so heavily into rewriting everything and migrating to TypeScript and designing everything into modular packages is for the long-term maintenance. We want it to be sort of, we don't want to do complete rewrites every now and then, right? Ideally, we want the current code base to be able to stay maintainable for the long term as long as possible. I think Vue 2 has been around for over 4 years now, right? So I think that's basically where I would call Vue 2 a loosely typed code base. It uses Flow, but it's like in a lot of places we kind of work around it. And I realize incomplete type coverage is actually kind of like just 10% better than no type coverage. So it's like day and night compared to full type coverage, right? So I think in that aspect, Vue 3 is such a more maintainable code base, and we're pretty sure it's going to be able to hold its place for much longer. And we would like to avoid major breakage as much as we can, but it could be possible that we'll consider moving to a more sort of a new major at a fixed interval, and the new major might just contain very, very minor breaking changes. So that's a model that we might consider. But we're not foreseeing any sort of Vue 3-like major rewrites in the next 5 years. Wow, that's just what I said.
Yes, of course. Thank you for answering that question about the future in that sense. Is there something on your mind for example, ESM? Like Vite, in some ways, it's also, of course, trying to go that route. For the code base itself, so if someone wants to not even use, like just start developing with it and wants to go the ESM route, what would you suggest?
You already can. So every Vue 3 package is distributed in a number of formats. We have the global builds, which is the traditional script include. We have a ESM browser build, so which you can directly import using native script type equals module, your browsers. We have another ESM build toward specifically targeting bundlers, which is built a bit differently so that you can leverage all the maximum tree shaking capabilities of the bundlers. For example, you can drop off development-only code. You can turn off certain features, automatically get best tree shaking possible. And then you have the common.js build, which is automatically loaded in Node.js, which you probably don't need to care about. So So all in all, Vue 3 is pretty feature-oriented. We kind of think about all the possible ways people would want to use it. And obviously, you mentioned Vite, this new experimental dev server, which is completely centered around ESM. During development, we are using native ESM, and during build, we are using rollup to get the best possible tree shaking. We're essentially trying to use Vite to push the ecosystem to move towards ESM compatible dependencies, because all these common JS based dependencies are, I don't know, they are kind of a sort of a artifact of the transition period of the development ecosystem, and they're not really that easy to tree shake. Like, you can do it to a certain degree, but it's extremely difficult with all the dynamic thing, kind of like template versus render functions. But the downside is, if you're using Vite, then the default target is you're targeting browsers that natively supports ESM modules, right? So that's kind of the trade-off you kind of have to make.
There's one question there that's a good follow-up for this. Do you think there will be ever like a Vue CLI to Vite kind of tool to migrate your projects?
The two projects are not 100% compatible, but if you're just using the most basic features, they are almost interoperable, I think. We are obviously trying to keep them as close as possible. There are some like minor differences in terms of the config format and how they load environment variables, but we try to keep both using the idiomatic Vue development experience. All the single file component features work exactly the same way. So unless you're using some very, very advanced features in Vue CLI, it shouldn't take too much effort to migrate an app to Vite. Or that's what we hope. I mean, Vite is still in early stages, but it's also a little bit different in terms of scope compared to Vue CLI, because the CLI intends to be all-encompassing. It gives you all these integration with ESLint, type checking, test runners, and all that. But Vite is much smaller in scope. It only serves your code during development and builds it. It doesn't care about linting or testing or anything like that. So we'll see where this goes, because there are just so many possible directions for Vite to go at this point. We don't want to kind of sort of mold it into something when there are so many possibilities.
Thank you for all the follow-up there.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is one question, and it's about Vuex. So what will happen to Vuex with the new composition API? In one of your past talks, you might have mentioned something about Vuex ditching mutations, or perhaps ditching Vuex altogether.
Did you watch Kia's talk? He talked about all this. Right, go watch Kia's talk.
Yes.
It is recorded, so all the talks will be available.
Yeah.
They will, up from next week.
But generally, what's your opinion about the state management with Vue 3? I mean, with composition API, now we have different possibilities to manage state. Do you still think that pattern like Vuex is something to go, or there might be some simpler solutions? Directly using
So honestly, I think with the composition API, it wouldn't take too much effort to everyone to sort of invent their own state management solution. We're already kind of seeing that with React hooks. There's so many different hooks-based state management libs, each just slight different preferences and trade-offs, right? And I think that's somewhat a good thing, because this kind of state management is kind of very hard to design a one-size-fit-all kind of solution, because that's the part, because state management is the part where most of your business logic lives, and people will have really strong opinions on how they prefer to write that part of code. And I think it's good to, let's say you don't care about server-side rendering, then the easiest state management solution with Vue 3 is a single reactive object. Just share this object across your application, you get state management for free, right? The reason Vuex exists is because it now is more or less a set of conventions for every developer in your team to know where certain types of code should go to. right? So you don't need to sort of bike shed about, hey, should I put this code here or there? Or should I name this, that, or this, right? It's all called actions. It's all called store state. You just put in these directories or places that you should be putting them in. Makes it easier for you to read other people's code, makes it easier for you to read your own code. And obviously, when you have a standard API, it's easier to sort of integrate into, say, the dev tools, right? So that's essentially when you're trying to deal with state management at scale, you are trading a bit of freedom or flexibility in return for more predictability, maintainability, and debuggability.
I think it's really nice info. Thanks. And do you think it's
Nice.
there is no problem with tree shaping with like global state management? Because usually with Vue's design patterns, like we have a global state, unless we go with something like a modular approach. So how do you see it about like trade-off between performance and experience?
I think Kia's Vuex 5 proposal already touched on that. So when you split into submodules, the way you can import them in a way that tree shaking just works automatically. Yeah, so you should look into it.
Sure. Yeah, start talking with you.
And I
Shall
have
we
one.
take last few questions from the public? Sorry, as well. Go ahead first, and maybe after that, then we can take
No,
last few questions.
I wanted
from
to
the
ask
public.
you something about. So you are also the majority of the RC work was done in this new normality and crazy situation we are all living in. How this did affect the core team, and how did you manage as a team to continue motivating the community to contribute and deal with all that what's happening and still come up with such an amazing release?
Well, honestly, since the team was remote in the first place, it didn't really affect how we collaborate or work. So it's more on a personal level. And ironically, since you're forced to stay at home all the time, some people may actually get more time for open source. I don't know. Personally, for me, because I work from home anyway, so the work schedule for me actually isn't much different. So I'm actually able to focus a bit more. Although it can get boring at times without proper outdoor activities, but I would say the pandemic didn't really put too much stress on the development process. If anything, because I can't send the kids to daycare, I kind of have to spend more time with them. But I don't think that's a bad thing. So.
Teaching Vue and teaching school at the same time. Thank you for the answer, Evan.
Yeah, so Evan, there's a question from the chat. So with the enhanced TypeScript support, are there plans to update the documentation with more TypeScript examples and coverage?
So our basic documentation will always remain JavaScript because that's the base layer. But if you look at the API references in Vue 3, you'll see some of the APIs actually contain type definitions. So if you're a TypeScript user, you can directly look at, you'll feel right at home. And one thing we'll do probably in the future is we are already able to automatically extract all the metadata from our from the whole code base via TypeScript, the API extractor. So we'll probably use that in some way in the future to generate automatically generate an API reference that's more targeted towards TypeScript users. So you kind of have all these links between interfaces and all that, so you can jump around. But again, if you're a TypeScript user, the source code is now so much more readable. With a good IDE, you can it becomes really pleasant to read the code base because you can like just jump to definitions all over the place, and you'll be able to follow along the logic much better.
Good.
Thanks, Evan. So what is one of the most requested features that you're excited to bring to Vue 3?
It's hard because I want to say personally, I'm obviously most excited about composition API and some of the new single file component improvements. But I don't know if it can qualify as what people asked for. But I think one good quality of life improvement is just the template can return multiple root nodes now. So it's like implicitly a fragment if you want to. So having to always wrap your template with a div is kind of a thing of the past.
I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very happy about this.
Yeah.
Yes, I get that error all the time.
So I have
Ben, did you spot some more interesting questions in the chat at this moment in time?
Yeah, I have a very big question from you. Like for 2 years, you was all focusing on Nuxt and Vue 3, and now you released it. And you was also dreaming about something like Vuejs, and you finally created it. So what do you think would be your major or biggest invitation in the ecosystem? Like, do you have anything in mind for next major versions?
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the question.
I mean, like, what's your biggest dream right now about Vue? Like, for Vue 4 or any tool that you want
You mean the next big thing?
Yes. That's what I dream about.
It's probably VietPress. So VietPress is built on top of Vite, and one thing I really want to get polished in VietPress is what it already does is we know all these server generated static site generators like Nuxt or Gatsby or Gritsum. This model is really good in the sense that you get the same development experience as a single page application, but you can generate static content. The downside is oftentimes there's a lot of trade-offs or hydration costs when you have a lot of static content on the page. And what VietPress already does is it actually intelligently throws away all the code that's related to your static parts. So it only ships the code that's hydrating your dynamic bits inside your whole application. Now, I know what some of the existing solutions do is that you limit your markdown pages to only static content. You cannot have dynamic bits inside your markdown so that you don't have to hydrate the markdown parts. But that's a limitation but if you want to embed dynamic components inside your content, that becomes a different question, right? MDX is essentially generating full JavaScript for all your markdown, regardless of it's static or not, and then hydrating it on the client, which is a lot of unnecessary work. So VPress kind of gets around that problem. So you can have dynamic bits anywhere you want inside your markdown, but the final shipped JavaScript will only contain the code that's relevant to those dynamic bits, and all the static content in your markdown are thrown away. So you're not paying the double payload hydration cost in this model anymore. And that's something I'm really excited about. I kind of put it down because I was trying to focus to get Vue 3 out of the door, but I think that's what I'm going to pick up once Vue 3 gets more stable and we finish our plans in Q4.
Yeah, that sounds so interesting. Follow up. And so this is also applying for client-side navigation. Like when this is happening, we want to do not use JavaScript and load everything from pre-generated version.
Yeah. There's a lot of constraints that you kind of have to work with. It's always a trade-off. Like the more flexibility you want, the more performance overhead you kind of have to pay. And VPress is sort of, by limiting the use case to very specifically about generating static content based on Markdown, you can sort of extract the maximum possible benefits while still retaining the dynamic benefits you get from the development side.
All right. Maria, I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, that would be perfect. So, Evan, how do you maintain a healthy life-work balance as a full-time open source maintainer?
Well, the secret is, so I think what I realized after becoming a full-time open source maintainer is realizing that in the past, I used to do it in my spare time, right? It's common for me to do open source on weekends when I still had a full-time job. But now I try to limit myself to only work on stuff in what I consider to be work time, right? So I take breaks on weekends. I try not to look at things. And I think another important skill as an open source maintainer to good to have is knowing how to turn off certain things. So I kind of have developed a switch in my mind where I'm like, now I'm off. I'm not looking at any GitHub notifications or Discord messages or anything. So I can actually enjoy the quality time with family and all that. And it's not always that easy, right? Sometimes you feel like, oh, there are so many people depending on me. But over time, it's really just kind of understanding the situation so that you can efficiently triage all the incoming messages and knowing that some of them isn't really that urgent, so that you can sort of focus on what is important before you without all of these things pulling back at your head all the time. It's easier said than done, but I think, and sometimes I struggle too, but I think if you are aware of the importance of doing this and try to sort of consciously practice this, like cutting yourself off from these distractions, it'll help a lot for your mental health as an open source developer.
Great answer. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I can imagine, especially for you, something you've created that, well, you created with multiple people, that you can get easily consumed in it. So you maybe have that feeling that you really are really attracted to it day and night. I can only imagine.
Yeah, obviously you have to be passionate about it in the first place. Otherwise, there's no way you'll be able to do this for this long. Yeah.
Ben, did you have one additional question, or do we round it up from here?
I think we round up from here. That was a great way to end the talk, I think, with Maria's question. So back to you, Josh.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you all for joining. Thanks for all the people joining in the Q&A session. Thank you, Evan, for taking your time to answering everyone. Maybe we can wave everybody goodbye, and maybe the people in the chat can wave us goodbye. And the people that are going back to the virtual event, we will see you in a few minutes. We have to start a new stream for you, but we'll be back in 2-3 minutes. So thank you, everybody. We really enjoyed it, and we hope to see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Woo! Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.